Okay, Dave, buddy, let's see what we've got going on here. Okay, so materials, got lots of materials in here. Okay, so let's come back to that in a second. Let's get our render setup going. So we need Arnold on, we want active shade on. And we want max legacy support. Let's don't use all our processors. Let's take one down. And let's use HD 1280. That sounds fine. And we'll leave the default shader, default rendering. It'll be faster. It's grainy, but that's okay. And so render, and here's what you have. Okay, so this is what you got going on here. Okay, so we're going to break this down into two different things that are going on overall, which is the breakup between our painted surface and our metal surface, and then the grunge that we're putting on here. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is this is a piece of metal that was like on maybe a tractor or something like that that's been sitting outside. And it's been banged up and the weather's been getting to it. And so that's what we have. Personally, I never seen a purple tractor, so I'm not going for purple. So let's see what we got going in here. Okay, dirt, paint. Okay, so here's our paint. So I'm just going to apply the paint to it first. So I need to pick it. And we're just going to apply the paint. So the paint is the only thing on here. Now you've got, looks like you've got an AO going on in here. Yay! Yay! Okay. I don't know why in the hell you have it plugged into base weight. We do not want it there. So let's get out of there for right now. But it looks like you may, I'll come back to this, but that's a nice node structure. Very nice. Okay. So let's see what we got going on here. All right, so I'm going to change my base color. All right, I have a problem right off the bat. Some of the things you're setting in here, I can tell you have no idea what you're doing. Okay, first of all, we do not want simple materials. We want advanced materials because we're advanced people. Okay, metalness. This will never be anything other than 0 or 1, okay? So the way you have to think of things is something is either a piece of metal or it's not a piece of metal. It's not partially a piece of metal. So 0.24 says, hey, I can't really decide if this is metal or if it's not metal, so I'm going to make it some weird hybrid that is partial metal. No, it's either metal or it's not. Now, if it's a piece of metal and it has a paint on top of it, it's no longer metal, it's paint. You get that? Okay. So, since this is the painted surface, and right now we got a bump showing up on here, so I'm just going to turn that bump off. All we got to do is go down here and just uncheck it here, so that's not in our way. So we know this is not a piece of metal, it's a piece of painted surface, so this should be 0. 0. It is not a piece of metal. Okay, we got our reflections, or roughness. I think this would be a rougher piece. Okay, so in other words, if it's something that's been painted, even if it was initially glossy, once it's been sitting out in space outside, rained on and stuff, it's going to start getting more dull. Okay, so it's not going to be real glossy where this is going down where it's real glossy. It's going to get dull, so we're going to break that light hitting on it up. Now, I want to look at what you got going in here too. Let's look at your actual piece for a second. So I'm going to turn this off. Let's just look at our geometry, and it's yikes. Okay, I'm going to save our active perspective view right here so we can come back to this. And what the hell is going on with this? Okay, this is not what we're doing. First of all, this is supposed to be a 45-degree angle in here, and what you did, shame on you. All right, what happened was, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's go ahead and put this shader on this too, so we have something in here. What happens is when I did the original video and we made the little boxes in there and we chamfered the edges, that chamfer tool is different now in Max 2020. I think they changed it about 2019, and I think that was 2017. Okay, so it's the same thing doing the chamfer, okay, but it puts an extra edge in here now, okay, which is right here, okay. We want this, sorry, not this one, this one. I'll take it back. It is back. It's this one. That should be 0. So I don't know why they did this, but well, I know why they did it. But anyway, it's just confusing to students when they've seen my original one. They just go put the chamfer on. They don't pay any attention to what's actually going on, which is kind of depressing because you should be paying attention to what's going on. Okay, so this should be 0. Now that's the kind of thing that I was wanting over here. Okay, so let's just get rid of that. And you didn't do that. And of course, I went back and commented on this way back when you made this, and why you never went back and fix it. I don't know if you just don't go in and ever read any of the stuff that I write, but anyway, we need to fix this. So we don't want this edge right there. Hold down my control key. We don't want this edge. We don't want this edge. So control backspace. And let's see if that got us. Okay, so we got this one here, control backspace. And this one, control backspace. Let's see if that's going to give us. Yeah, that's not a quad, but for what we're doing right now, it won't make any difference. So, the grid off. We got the same problem down here. Got to get rid of that. Okay, so now that's back to what we want. But the problem you're going to get into is now it's got a kind of a rounded edge. Now, the other thing, and let's look at your Vertex Paint that you got going on here. So let's pull that up before we go any further. Let's go to our Vertex Paint and let's turn this on. And okay, yikes, I can tell that you don't understand how things weather, okay? So what happens? This is what happens. We have a piece of metal. We paint it. Why do we paint it? So it looks pretty? No. We paint it because we have moisture in our air. We have water in our air. Water is an acid, okay? We don't think of water as acid because we drink it all the time, but basically it oxidizes things and so it eats metal. Okay, so if we don't paint our metal, the water gets into it and starts eating it and rusts it. That's why we paint it. Now, so the paint over time will start to deteriorate. Where does it deteriorate? Well, it deteriorates in 2 places. Wherever humans come in contact with it by rubbing it or scratching it, and or where the edge of a piece of metal is. So in other words, where this edge is right here, and where that edge is, and where this edge is, that's where the the plate's gonna start breaking down. So you're just kind of randomly painting things on here. And to a certain degree, I don't have a problem with that. But you're not paying attention to, and you're not really paying attention. Oh, well, this edge is where it will start breaking apart. You're just randomly placing things. And that's one of the problems with students when they first start texturing. They just think texture is random. I just put random patterns on it. No, we don't put random patterns on it. We kind of put random patterns, but then we specifically put them in specific places where they would really be. Okay. Now, this piece is not built correctly, okay? You were supposed to put a Retopology Modifier on this, okay? So I'm going to just dump this Vertex Paint right now. And I forgot to turn, oh, now I'm going to leave it on so we can see it. Now to turn it off, if I went into my object properties, I could turn it off right here, but I'm going to leave it on. Okay, you were supposed to, and of course I wrote about this, because you just ignore me. You're supposed to use a Retopology Modifier in here. Okay, this is a new thing in Max 2021. You got to make sure you're updated to the current version, and then it will. And we do not want green wireframes with black wireframes. and it will retopologize this. Okay, let's go back to 5,000 and see what that looks like. And that looks pretty good. Okay, now that looks nice. Now, the problem that you get into is it dumped the Vertex Paint, which I don't like your Vertex Paint anyway, so we don't really care. Okay, so we're going to convert this to a poly now, and now that's a nice flow of geometry. Nice flow. Nice flow. Okay, but it messed up our smoothing groups. That's easy to fix. All we got to do, well, there's two ways to fix it. One way to go to polygon, select them all, go down here to auto smooth, about maybe 30-degree angle, and hit auto smooth, and that will fix that. Oops, I need a lower angle. That's right, 15 degrees. That's better. I don't like the way that creates some of that geometry. Let's go back. I don't like that. And a lot of that probably had to do with you didn't have the smoothing groups corrected on this. So let's dump our smoothing groups, 15-degree angle, auto smooth it, and let's turn the Vertex Paint off. So we want map channel. Actually, we want just to turn this off. Okay. All right. So now, yeah, see how we got nice angles in there once we reset that smoothing group. And I got a problem right there. It'll probably fix that. I guess you never looked at your geometry because you got vertexes overriding each other there, which is easy to fix. All you have to do is go to vertex. You want to constrain it to edge or face and untangle that. Pay attention. Here's the thing that you need, a concept you need to embrace. The computer is stupid and evil. Nobody's paying you for the computer. They're paying you to watch and monitor the computer. And when it does stupid and evil things, you fix it. All right, now let's try, see if we can't do this retopology again. And we're going to have it on smoothing groups. And your smoothing group was screwed earlier, and that's probably why it gave us funkiness. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, and then we need to fix our smoothing groups. Let me show you a different way to fix the smoothing groups. There is a smooth modifier you can drop on. This is another way you can do it. So if we put a smooth on it, oh, looky there. Okay, now it's giving us this in here. I'm going to auto smooth. And we're setting an angle, and our angle is 30 degrees. If this is too low, then we start getting that faceting. 30 degrees. We just want to check, see, we only get sharp angles where we get sharp angles. There we go. Yay! Okay, now this piece is fixed. Okay, this is what you should have done way back when you first created this piece, and I went in and said, hey, dude, it's not right. Okay. So now we're just going back in and do our Vertex Paint again. So we turn it on, and we're going to go in here, and our paintbrush is way too big. We're going to turn it down, and where it's going to accumulate is around in here. Okay, this is where it'll accumulate on these edges. Can we have some going through the center? Sure, but we know the edges is where it's going to accumulate because that's where it's going to be stressed. That's where the piece of metal is going to be stressed. Okay, anytime there's angles in there. Now, I have a tendency to also come back, and I have a tendency to come in here and say blur all of it, and it's going to blur that. It gives me some gray out in areas, which will help me later on. Then I come back on here, and then I paint back on here again. Okay. And the thing about it is, which is nice about this, is we can always come back later and decide we want to put more in. Okay, so there we go. All right, so we always want to be sure we turn this. Go back to your vertex color display, turn it off so we don't see the vertex. And then we can go ahead and bake this in, because we can always just add it back on and then it'll come back to us. Okay, so let's go back to our restore our active view. And so now another thing I would do, okay, and of course this is in the video, so, but this is what I would do, is we don't really want these sharp edges. So what I would go ahead and do is put a chamfer modifier on this, okay. Now eventually, initially it's going to explode it. That's because this amounts too much. Just right click and zero it out. And then we're just going to give it a little bit just around that edge, just a little bit. We don't want it too big. And we want at least 2 segments in there. And then that's going to catch nice highlights on it. Look at that nice highlight. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's still a little facet in here, that's okay. And if I wanted to fix that later, I can come in here. I can put a mesh smooth on there, and it would only take 1 iteration most likely to smooth that out. Okay. And that looks pretty good. Let's go back to our restored active perspective view. Now, I usually try to hold one particular view when I'm working on it. That way I can render it and then I can come back and look at it at the same place all the time. And so now we've got a nice piece, nice rounded edges, looking really good. It's got a nice kind of a matte color on here. I don't want purple. What the heck? We don't want purple paint. I'm going to go for something a little bit more natural looking. Maybe a tan or something like that. Purple's pretty. I don't have a problem with purple. I don't have purple tractors. Okay. Yay. Okay. So now we're cooking. We're cooking. All right. So now let's look at your noise that you got in here. So initially what I'm going to do is put the noise in my base color, which is just going to allow me to see it. Now I'm going to take off my vertex color. I just want to see the noise first. What kind of noise you got going in here? And that looks pretty good. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's plug this back in here. I think the noise is a little big maybe. So I'm going to go to our noise and I'm going to bring the size down a little bit. Let's try 1. Yeah, I like that breakup better. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Okay. So now you put you've enabled this curve. Okay, so now what we're going to do is let's just turn this off and we're going to turn our bump back on. So go back to our paint and turn our bump on. Okay. Now you're going to see a little bit of bump in here, but here's why you're going to have a little problem with your bump. Okay. Is that how deep the bump is based on the angle of this line. Since this line is straight up and down, it's going straight back and it's hard to see. So what we really want to do is I'm going to constrain this right now with this here where I can only move it left and right. And as I pull this over, you're going to see our bump jump out. Woo! Check it out. Bump is kicking out there. Okay. So that's based on the distance of this angle. Okay. So that's a little bit more natural looking. All right. And of course, down inside of that's going to be our metal and up here is our paint. Okay. So if we actually go in here right now and this has got its dirt grime, and that's not really, this is metal, and we're going to make it rust like it's a rusted piece of metal. And so for right now, later I'm going to do a little bit more, but for right now I just want to get a rust kind of color in there. Okay, and then we're going to apply this, and now that's going to drop that in there. Okay, so now you got a rust color, and now I might want to boost this a little bit. Yeah, now I'm getting some nice kind of crevices in there. Let's move this over a little bit. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay. Now I can add more or less of all of this if I select both of these and I drag left or right. Now if I want to limit it to just left and right so I'm not accidentally moving it up and down, and I can determine, you know, how much rust I want in there. Okay. If I want a lot, yikes. Okay, it's too much. Find that happy medium. Okay, what it really should be is a painted surface with a little bit of rust showing, so people get a little bit too overbearing. I think something maybe like that, and like I said, we can come back later. As a matter of fact, I'll show you how we can do that right now, which is kind of cool when you have active shade. I don't think you were using active shade, and I keep telling everybody to use active shade, but everybody just ignores me. Yes, I have no idea what I'm doing, so all right, so we're going to bring our Vertex Paint back in, and what's cool about this is right now, okay, if I come in here and I start painting on this, oops, let's turn it on where I see it. Okay, you'll see that this updates in real time in here. Okay, check it out. Okay, maybe I want to switch this to white, and I want to come back in and trim in on that a little bit. Okay, so I can sit here and paint in this in real time and see what's going on by going over here. Okay, well, that's cool. Okay, so let's turn this back off. We can come back to that later. Okay, let's see what else we got going here. Okay. All right, now here's another thing is I like to have a little bit of a bump going out into the paint. So there's actually some puckering going on here. Now, the problem is that means that this needs to go up above 1. I'm going to go here, and it needs to go up above 1, and nothing is happening. And the reason is because you've got this button clamp in here. And what clamp means is that if I happen to drift above 1 at the top or below 0 at the bottom, it's still going to read it as 1. Okay, when I turn this off, then it's going to say, oh, well, it's okay if this goes out above. Okay, and now you'll see I'm getting some puckering up in here as I bring that up. I can also bring this one down a little bit. Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit of wrinkling in here. Here's another cool thing you can do. I'm going to go in here and add a couple more points in here. And I'm going to take this one and I'm going to pull it down a little bit. And it's going to create me a little bit of a little ripple along that edge. Woo! Check that out. Okay, so you have all kinds of different things that you can do in here which will modify this. You kind of need to play with that a little bit. Okay, so now we're getting some puckering in here. Now, I can also come in here back to my paint. And I got a bump in here, and so I can go in here and I can crease this if I want to really bring that bump out more if I want to do that. So I've got an overall, this is overall size, amount of bump. Okay, so we'll leave it somewhere in there. Now, don't pay attention to my numbers. I mean, you can kind of pay attention to my numbers, but students have a tendency to go monkey-do. Monkey see, monkey do. Monkey see, monkey do. Okay, he had 5.36 in his, therefore mine must be 5.36. No, it's a piece of art. This gets you a range to get in there, but then play with it. All of these settings are not absolutes. Okay, all right, so for right now, though, we're going to go in here and we're going to go back to our paints. Okay, back to our paint. We're just going to assign it to it, so it's just the paint. We don't want to see the bump right now, so on our paint, we're just going to uncheck bump so we don't see it. So we're back to the paint. All right, so now we're going to get into this dirt that we wanted to put on here, okay? Now, you were putting the dirt in the base weight, okay, which, yes, that puts some dirt on there, but no, that's not where we want it. But I want to kind of break down what you have going on here. So this is your Grunge Noise. So I'm just going to put it in our base color, and it's just going to drop black and white in here where I can kind of see it. And to me, it's too small. This is like got little dots on it. Okay, so right off the bat, this is too small. Now, we've got a scale in here. Okay, and you're having to set all this. That's kind of a pain to set this, you know, so you have to set X and Y and Z, which I find a pain. Let me show you a little trick. If we come in here under our maps, under OSL, we go to Math, Float, we go to this first one, Absolute. Okay, all we have to do is plug this Absolute into our scale, and then it zeroes our scale out, and the Absolute, this is the control for all three of these at the same time. So now I can sit here and dial this in with just one control. Okay, you had it around 5, so you have these little bitty dots. I don't want that. I'm trying to get it to look more like it's broken up. Okay, so let's crank it down a little bit more. Maybe somewhere around that. Looks pretty good. Okay. All right, so pull that. So now put that back in, and that looks pretty good. I think maybe a little bit. Maybe something like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so now you had plugged that into our base weight, which that's not where it goes. Now what we want to do is to come in here and get a mix where we can use this as a mask for mix some colors. So if we just come up here to our search and we type in mix, it's going to list a bunch of mix maps for us. Now the thing we have to know is you'll see that some of these say Arnold, some say OSL, and we can use where is our, so you'll see a mix where it says maps general right here. Okay, now what that is that's Max's mix, and we can't use this mix. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but we're using Arnold, some Arnold shader maps back down here, and you can't plug an Arnold map into a general map. It won't work, so we can't use that one. So we can go here and get this mix RGB. That's a Arnold. We can use that. Okay, we can also use this one up here, this mix color. This is an OSL. So either one of these will work. And let's use the OSL. Doesn't matter which one. Let's use that one. So I'm just going to plug this. Now what I want to do is I want to keep the color. So I'm going to copy the color off of this shader. And I'm going to just go ahead and paste it in both of these. And then I'm going to plug this into my base. Nothing will change because it's just running a color through it. And then this multiply will run into our mix. And still nothing's going to change. Now A is our dark. So we come in here and we start darkening this up. I'm going to make it a little bit more redder, pull out some of the saturation and get it pretty dark. And then that's going to be our dirt that's on there. Now, a thing that a drawback to this, it means that I cannot set an attribute to the dirt separate than the attribute of the paint, because it's all going into the paint. So if I want the dirt to have a different surface sheen than the paint, then I have to approach it a little bit different way. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. So what we want to do is to come in here and bring in another blend. Okay, because we can stack a blend inside of a blend. Now this bottom one is going to be our paint. So we're just plugging our paint into the bottom one. And then this top one is going to be our dirt grunge. And then what we're going to do is use this mask that I've created, and it's going to be the mix between the two. And then I apply this to my object. Oh, sorry, we don't need this mix anymore. That was just for color purposes. We just need the mask. Okay, so now it's got my paint in here, and now you'll see this has got a light color on it because this grunge I've not set. I want to change it to my advanced. I do not want hardly any reflection into it. I do want quite a bit of scatter on it, and then of course I want to change this into my dark grunge color. So now the dirt is back on there like I had it before, but now I have a control for the sheen of the dirt, and I have a control for the sheen of the paint. And so now instead of the paint going directly in here, this is the new paint node, and then we assign this back to it, and now we're back to where we were. Okay, so on our paint here, and then we got to go back in here and turn our bump on our paint back on because we've turned that off before. And so now we've got the dirt on here, and we've got our rust down here, which, you know, later I'm going to come back and make that not just a solid color. And then we've got all our puckering going on in here. Okay, so dirt shader. Okay, our metal rust shader and our paint shader. Okay, and we're nesting a blend inside of a blend is what we're doing. Okay, now that we have all that set up, the other thing we can do is to start coming in here and playing now, because since we have our active shade on, I can come back in here and go back into my painting, and like if I think this has got too much in here, I got white, I can just come in here, paint that out, and you'll see it's interactive in here, and so I'm able to actually get what I want. Now sometimes what I do is come in and paint with some gray, and I'll turn down the opacity a little bit, and that way when I'm painting in here, what I'm getting is some puckering, but I'm not getting any metal because the gray is puckering and the black is metal. So I'm going to go around this edge here, and then if I go back on top of it a couple of times, it'll start building up, And then we'll start seeing a little bit of the paint coming in there. Okay. I might want to make it a little bit darker. I want to make this a little bit smaller. And just kind of build it up. And then you can see our paint starting to come in here. So it's easy for us to go back and forth, add some pucker. Then if I want to add, just darken this up a little bit. If I want a little bit of the paint showing in there, I can build that up. Paint showing. If I decide it's too much, come in here, get some white. Make a little smaller brush. And then I'm going to go across that and break that up. So once you get the shader kind of made, then you can come back and start painting more on this to kind of control what you're wanting things to have happen. A little bit of puckering in there. Make it a little bit darker. Let that build up. And then we'll start getting a little bit of paint showing in there. Okay, so hopefully that's helped you. And let me know if I can help you with anything else. Okay, thanks, Dave. Bye.